Hello everyone. In today's video, you're about to witness a game that comes straight out of history, a battle that feels almost forgotten, yet burns brightly once you rediscover it. The man at the center of this story is none other than John Templar, a figure whose life and legacy are just as intriguing as the moves he played on the chessboard. John Templar was born in 1847 in Bristol, England, an era where chess was still developing its modern rules and character. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Templar was not born into privilege or wealth. He grew up in a modest household, where books and leisure were luxuries, not guarantees. Yet somehow, he found his way to the 64 squares. According to accounts from those who knew him, John often studied by candlelight, replaying games from newspapers and copying annotations by hand. From the very beginning, chess was not just a pastime for him, it was his identity. By the 1870s, Templar was a well-known name in Bristol chess circles. He had a reputation for being a quiet man at the table, rarely speaking, but his moves did all the talking. His style was direct, sharp, and fearless. Opponents would often remark that when John leaned forward and fixed his gaze on the board, it was as though nothing else in the world existed. He became known for his ability to find surprising resources in lost positions, earning him the nickname, the Silent Fighter. Yet, Templar's life was far from smooth. Outside the board, he worked in clerical jobs to support himself, often struggling with money. Many of his peers pursued professional careers, but John chose stability over ambition. Chess, for him, was never about fame or wealth. It was about proving something deeper, both to himself and to the world around him. By the late 1880s, his name appeared in tournaments across the West Country, and one of his most famous encounters took place in 1890 in Nice, during the Champion Cup. There, John faced William Barry, another strong English master of his day. It was in this tournament that he played the game we're about to explore, a game that has since been dubbed the Nice Templar. This wasn't just another club skirmish. It was a clash of ideas, a battle between boldness and caution, and one that showcased the very best of John's style. Even at over 40 years old, when most players would begin to slow down, John displayed a creativity and fire that caught everyone by surprise. John Templar passed away in 1928 at the age of 81, leaving behind only a handful of recorded games. And yet those few games still sparkle with brilliance more than a century later. In many ways, John represents the countless forgotten masters of the past, men and women whose contributions to chess history remain hidden in dusty archives, waiting for moments like this to come alive again. Now, let's dive into this remarkable battle from 1890, the Nice Templar game. Watch carefully, because I promise you, this one will not disappoint. White opens with the king's pawn to e4, a classic move to seize the center. Black responds in kind, solidly occupying the center with e5. White develops the king's knight to f3, applying immediate pressure on the e5 pawn. Black defends this pawn by developing the queen's knight to c6. Templar chooses the Ponzani opening with c3, reinforcing the d4 square for a strong pawn center. Black counters aggressively, challenging White's center immediately with d5. White responds with bishop to b5, pinning the knight on c6. Black creates a counter threat by developing the bishop to g4, pinning White's knight on f3. White reinforces the pin with queen to a4, increasing the pressure. Black finds a clever defense with bishop to d7, blocking the line of attack. White resolves the tension by capturing on d5 with the e-pawn. In a surprising retreat, Black moves the knight all the way back to b8, conceding time and initiative. White castles kingside, moving the king to safety and connecting the rooks. Black develops the king's bishop to d6. White seizes the open file by placing a rook on e1, piling pressure on the e5 pawn. Black is forced to bolster the pawn with f6, creating kingside weaknesses. White strikes in the center with d4, opening the position. Black attempts to undermine White's pawns with c6. White captures on c6, and Black recaptures with the knight. White advances with d5, once again displacing Black's knight. Black retreats the knight to e7. White simplifies with bishop takes d7, delivering a check. Black recaptures with the queen. White trades queens with queen takes d7, a strategic decision that exposes Black's king. The Black king is forced to recapture on d7. White follows up with c4, reinforcing the powerful d5 pawn and grabbing space. Black develops the rook to c8. White continues development with knight to d2. Black attempts to create pressure with bishop to b4, pinning the knight. White simply chases the bishop away with a3, and Black retreats it to d6. Templar expands on the queen side with b4, gaining more space. Black prevents further advances by playing b6. White develops the queen's bishop to b2, aiming down a strong diagonal. Black repositions the knight to h6. White completes development by placing the other rook on c1. Black's knight jumps to f5, seeking activity. White centralizes a knight powerfully on e4. Black maneuvers a knight to f7. White captures the bishop on d6 with the knight. Black recaptures with the knight from f7. White pushes the pawn to c5, attacking the knight on d6. The knight escapes to b5. White chases the knight further with a4. The knight moves to c7. White shifts a rook to d1, supporting the powerful d5 pawn. Black develops a rook to d8. Templar shocks Black with bishop takes e5, boldly grabbing a pawn that was only loosely protected. Black brings a rook to e8, avoiding recapturing which would open dangerous lines. White immediately checks with c6. Black's king moves to d8. White advances relentlessly with d6. Black finally captures the bishop with f takes e5, but it is too late. White pushes the pawn to d7, threatening promotion. Black tries to block with rook to e6. White plays the brilliant d7 takes c8, promoting to a new queen and delivering check. Black's king is forced to capture the new queen. White continues the pawn storm with b5. Black centralizes a knight with knight to d4. White captures it with his knight. Black recaptures with the e-pawn. White captures the rook on e6. Black recaptures the rook with his knight. White activates his king by moving it to f1. Black's king moves to c7. White plays g3, controlling key squares. Black's king advances to d6. White's king moves to e2, staying active. Black's king centralizes to d5. White places a rook on c1, eyeing the open file. Black defends with knight to c7. White's king advances to d3, increasing the pressure. Black pushes g5, seeking counterplay. White calmly plays h3. Black resigns, seeing the hopeless position against White's active king, strong rook, and passed pawns. What a game! Templar's central pawn storm and that stunning promotion to a queen on c8 turned the tide. The Nice Templar, nickname, a nod to the Knights Templar, fits this knight-driven adventure perfectly. If you loved this journey through chess history, like and subscribe for more.